Thank you very much. Thank you to the ifCon committee for inviting me to make the presentation this morning, and it's a great pleasure to be with you. Let me give you a little background and why I put a title of "So You Want to Tell Your Story." Most people, when they first think about writing, think about, well, I don't know what to write about, and my point always has been, write what you know. And in fact, one of our hosts last night, our guided tour people at the Margaret Mitchell House, said Margaret Mitchell wrote the only novel she wrote that was ever published, called Gone with the Wind, because she wrote what she knew. She was born 35 years after the end of the Civil War. Her grandmother was very much a part of the story, and in fact, our tour guide said that her grandmother was the model for Scarlett. And there were other people in the story that she knew very well. So when you write what you know. And I will tell you a little bit, when you have a writer's workshop, you say, well, why is someone speaking? How do you have a writer's workshop? Because writing is obviously a very solo, singular kind of activity. You don't usually do it in groups. However, there are some people who do basically use groups to encourage them to do what they do. The first slide, and maybe a little difficult for you to see because of all the lights, is actually a picture of a very large circus tent. It actually is the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey circus tent. And on the back table happens to be a novel, the only novel that I have written that is published, called Leaving Flatiron Creek. And I'm basically, anyone who would be interested in a copy of the novel, I'd be happy to autograph it for you. It's $10, and all the money is going to go as a donation to ifCon. So just so you know that. But when I started, this actually was the third novel I wrote. It was not the first, but it was the first one that I really put the time and attention in to finishing, if you will. And you don't usually start with a novel, even though Chai introduced that this was a seminar about learning to write a novel. No, you don't have to start with a novel. So the question is, what do you write? First of all, we have a list of things, and there are many different things that people write. Of course, we've talked about the first things that everyone thinks about is a novel. You certainly don't have to start there. There are short stories. There's a memoir. Let me make a distinction here. Some people write memoirs, and you wonder, what is the difference between a memoir and an autobiography? Well, a memoir is a combination of fact and fiction. If you read a memoir, often you'll see texts with quotation marks. There's almost no way people could remember exactly what was said. But the memoir is made more dramatic by actually using quotations as if this was the conversation that took place. An autobiography usually is documented with very specific references and so forth. Also, there's the essay. You say, today we usually use the term an op-ed piece. You hear people, someone wrote an op-ed about this or that. That is really an essay. And certainly poetry, some people love to make the words sing. And of course, that's what poetry is all about. And then the final thing, and I think a lot of people start their writing by journaling. You basically say, well, how am I feeling today? You take out a pencil and paper or a pen and a book and start putting down, and you say, well, what do I start? How do I start? Well, you start literally with, today is Tuesday. And I'm sitting here and the weather is beautiful, and I just got back from a bicycle ride. And I noticed along the way there were whatever you saw. And you begin, and you find out that oftentimes the pen begins to do the work. You just begin to, your mind gets in a sort of a flow, if you will, and that's what journaling is about. It doesn't start, it doesn't stop. You may journal one day, put it away for a week, journal again. And I noticed in some graduate programs, that happens to be my professional business, they ask graduate students to journal about a particular issue going on. In fact, I was visiting a college this week, and they're having the first-year students journal about the debate, the healthcare debate, and what is their feelings about what they're seeing. They're just writing down, you know, what they hear on the news. They're talking to friends over coffee, so that you begin to get in a flow of a subject, in this case. Sometimes it's your life. Sometimes, and in fact, the very first thing I ever started with, that when I was very young, and I had been a journalist in high school. I went to Europe when I was 18, and my mother said, don't take pictures, just write your diary. A diary is a journal, in a sense. But it was about my reactions to travel, what I saw, what I didn't see. You know, 18 years old, I read it now and I laugh at some of the things I was impressed with or not impressed with. Then finally, you know, the two things most of us know about, the writing that you read in newspapers, the difference between news. A news article starts out what, when, where, why, and how right at the very beginning. In other words, you've got to get the attention of the person very quickly, and then they'll begin to read the rest of the story. That's what a news article is. It's based on the 5 W's, meaning how is supposed to be a W. The feature, of course, is, again, a nonfiction, meaning it's true, but it's based usually on a human interest or something else. All right, the question is, now that's what you write. So we got that down, and you say, well, I don't know how to write. You know, it's not one of those things I ever did, so how do you learn? Well, first of all, when I started being a serious writer, which, by the way, took place about 20 years ago, I said I'm the kind of person who learns from others. I'm not really very good at reading a book and learning how to do something. I usually learn better in a group setting. So what I did, I said, okay, first of all, I want to find someone who will teach me or tutor me. And actually, I was unsuccessful. So I said, well, some people literally, and now with the internet, it's a lot easier, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. Every one of you in your local community, there are writing workshops in your community college. It's a very inexpensive way. And again, it's a way where you go, and the assignment for this week is X. You're supposed to write a page or 2 or 3 pages. But the key is, not only do you write, but you write with the idea that you're going to share it with others. Now, you can share it with others several different ways, which I'll talk about. I actually, rather than finding a teacher or going to a community college, found a workshop and went away to something called the Clearing, which is a sort of a summer camp in northern Wisconsin, not only once, but twice, about 5 years apart, where you go into an intensive, every day you write something, you write it, you share it, people comment about it, and that was sort of how I got, you know, into the refining part, not only writing, but the editing part of what we do. And then finally, for the really serious, there are things, university workshops. Probably the most famous of all is the University of Iowa Writers Workshop, where you go and really have some of the very best writers in the country. And some people say it's so intimidating, you know, who would care what I write? People do care what you write. They're interested because most of us write our story. And we start talking about, you know, how we grow up or where we grew up and so forth.